Hi, my name is Norman Gridley. I'm an environmental engineer and an associate of Satarla, and I live in Santiago, Chile. And I want to talk to you a bit about risk in Chile. First, tell you a little bit about myself. As an environmental engineer, I'm also a social environmental risk specialist and risk manager. I'm a Canadian by birth, and I've been living here in Chile for the past 15 years. In terms of the country, just to tell you a little bit about Chile before we talk about risk, Chile has a population now of almost 20 million people. It's been growing rapidly. Since 1950, the population has tripled of this country. The population of Santiago, where I live now, is 7 million, so about 1/3 of the country lives in one city. Geographically, the country is very interesting. It's bounded on the east by the Andes mountain range and on the west coast by the Pacific Ocean. 4,300 kilometers long, the country, and an average of less than 200 kilometers wide. As a result, of course, it has a wide range of climate, with the driest desert in the world, the Atacama in the north, and some of the largest glaciers in the world in the south. And of course a wide range of rainfall and snowfall over those distances. In terms of the economy, very diverse and mixed economy. Huge part of the economy is mining related. Chile produces 10% of the world's copper on an annual basis. Other industries include fishery, forestry, tourism, vegetable, fruit export, and wines. And politically speaking, well, the country emerged from a dictatorship in 1990 through a democratic process. Since then, 30 years of democracy, and the country has a very stable democracy, as well as a well-established regulatory system and well-established and operative legal system. And now the question, I guess, is what does risk mean, first of all, in Chile, and how is it managed here? I'd like to refer mainly to the mining industry, which is where my direct experience is. And first of all, to say that in the large mining industry, the large mining companies, national and international, multinational, risk has been based largely on systems that started out with health and safety risk. And mining is inherently a potentially unsafe activity. So the history of risk management in mining was based on the sort of models related to health and safety. In the large national and multinational companies, though, that system has been expanded in general to encompass other risk consequences, including, of course, social, community, legal, environmental, financial, and so on. Where I've worked before in Anglo American, the company had a very well-established system for integrated risk management that covered all of those categories and went through identifying controls and critical controls. In the medium and smaller size companies, risk management, risk identification and management is a little more ad hoc and not necessarily always based on a system. And let me tell you a bit about some of the key risks here in Chile related to mining. I'd like to, of course, refer first to water. And I guess in many people's minds, water availability is critical to all industry and communities in Chile, in the north and in the center of the country where the majority of the people live. Climate change is identified frequently as a cause for water shortages in this country. There are reservoirs just north of Santiago that have been dry now for 4 or 5 years, and there's a lot of pressure to look towards desalination of water, which has its own inherent risks and costs, of course. So in the mining industry, water and water availability is a very important risk area. But another one that's very, very important now and a very recently and evolving risk area is the social and social-political aspect. Let me explain a bit about this. As I mentioned earlier, the country is a stable democracy. The model for the functioning economy of the country is based on a private sector model which was established in the late years of the military dictatorship and has been carried forward since then for 30 years continuously with all elected governments. And that model is a largely private sector driven model. The private sector owns and operates here, for example, highways, infrastructure like electricity supply, gas supply, water, wastewater. The banks are big operators in the country. There is a concentration of economic, shall we say, power or control in the hands largely of the private sector. And in October of last year, there was a very sudden and very important social uprising here that had its roots in some cost increases for electricity and for the metro system in Santiago, and seemed to be a trigger for demonstrations which sometimes turned violent. And in late October, there were some 1 million people marching on the streets of Santiago. This is like 15% of the city's population. And that particular manifestation has had social, political, financial, and security issues associated with it. And that is an emerging risk in Chile. This is a risk that, or a series of risks that the private sector is paying attention to, and it is recognized that through the changes that may occur from this particular social reaction, there will probably be a new constitution written for the country. There may be adjustment made to the macroeconomic model. There may be effects on the financial aspects of companies related to taxation. There certainly are concerns related to security and safety. This is an evolving risk in Chile, and I mention it to provide you with some understanding of what's happening in this country. I hope this has been helpful to you in understanding something of risk management here in Chile, and thank you very much for listening.